sequestration, new thing, probably a good thing, saves the environment. I don't know squat about it. I know they're going to pump carbon deep in the ground, in the right formation, in the right place in the state, probably a good idea. I don't know enough about it to sign a lease today. When you decide to do that, when you learn more, I'll learn more, we'll talk, I'll sign another lease maybe. Another thought just left me. Horizontal drilling, I've mentioned that. They're doing it mostly now for coal bed methane, but I hear they're starting to do it for Marcellus. The reason they're doing it on Marcellus is when Africa ran into North America a number of years ago, the land squashed up and formed the Alleghanies. When it did that, it made a lot of cracks this way. So what they're doing is they're going down to the Marcellus, and they're drilling across those cracks, fracking out those cracks, hoping to get a lot of gas that way. It's the way there was another shale in Texas that they used that way, and they've done well, so that's the big play now. That's why they're doing it. Again, probably a good thing at that depth. I'm not worried so much about it, at least in terms of polluting your water table at that depth. Compressor stations. A lot of times, particularly for coal bed methane, they need to compress that gas to get it out of here. You know, if the guy's going to drill a well on you, he might need a way to get the gas compressed to get it on. What I worry about is if you look at that lease and it says, and we can use your land for compressor stations for everybody else's gas around you. Well, you know, you don't need those compressor stations can be big, and they can be noisy, they can be problems. So make sure that the lease only lets them do on your land what it takes to get your gas out, and they probably won't need a compressor station, but if they do, it only should be to compress gas on your land, and if they want to compress other people's gas, that's a separate negotiation, that's some more money, and again, I don't know a lot about compressor stations. Pipelines, same thing. They need a pipeline to get the gas off. You want to know where it's going, where it is. The pipeline is a mess when they do it, then they cover it over. It's not much problem after that, unless, of course, you want to build a house or plow where that pipeline is. You need to make sure that pipeline doesn't interfere with your areas. How many years should I agree to in the primary term? What's a primary term? Lease has two terms. A primary term where they pay you money. You sign a lease, they pay you money, they have a number of years to drill at least the first well and get going. And once they drill a well, if they hit a well, then the secondary term kicks in, and that lease extends as long as that well is producing, usually in paying quantities. And that is 20, 40, 60, 80 years. It's a long time. Production curve on a well starts high, goes down, just gradually slopes off at some point. Off and on, it meets market, it hits the cost of marketability, and it's time to plug. Now, that's another problem, because by that time, it's not making enough money to pay to plug itself, and you've got some issues there. I'll try to talk about a little bit of that in a second. But, so the primary term, how long is the primary term? Years ago, I would see leases that would say 2, maybe 3 years. And maybe if you have an area where you know it's hot, where they're drilling next to you, and you want to get a well drilled on your minerals now while things are hot, then maybe a 3-year term is right. It's more of an exploratory area. You don't know, they haven't really got started yet. Maybe a 5-year term. Then they'll also want to have you renew for an additional 5 years, automatic, so it's like 10 years. Well, I wouldn't do that. I might say, okay, I'll give you 5, and I'll give you first right of refusal at 5 years if you want to do it again. Now, there's a risk, of course. If they're paying you a whole bunch of money by the acre and you think you got a good deal, you may want to keep them for 10 years. On the other hand, if you read those leases carefully, they can leave at about any time. You're the one that has to wait till they leave. So I wouldn't agree to a 10-year lease. I would say 5, and then you get first refusal. Somebody else gives me a better deal, you can match it. What kind of payments will I get? There are 4 categories of payment, and this is what I know least about in terms of the actual numbers. I know you care about it, so I'm going to talk about it a little, but not much. First of all, there's some kind of upfront payment. Usually it's called the delay rental during the primary term. How much are they going to pay you per acre per year until they drill a well and you start getting your royalties? That used to be, that's what you got. Then they have some leases now where the upfront money is called a paid-up lease, where you lease it to them for 5 years at $5 an acre, and so they multiply that out times your number of acres times the number of years, and they pay you up front. But this is not written in law how this has to be, so there are also leases where they pay you a bonus up front and they pay you a delay rent. It's just what you can negotiate, what they care about, what you care about what the money is. That's one kind of payment, the upfront money. Second is the royalty money. And that is, once they start producing and they start selling gas, they pay you a percentage of that. For years and years and years and years and years and years, it was 1/8 royalty, which always seemed low to me. But on the other hand, it costs between $250,000, $3 million to drill a well, so they're going to pay that back. And they are taking a lot more risk than you are. So there's the royalty. It used to be always 1/8. I have seen now 15%, one occasional 18%. That's probably pretty tough to get. I don't know. One thing about this is it's changing very, very quickly right now. That's the second. So the first kind is the upfront money. Second kind is the royalty. That's where your big money is probably going to be if you're getting money. Then there's something called a shut-in fee. What if the market goes down and they can't sell the gas? People aren't asking for the gas. Then do they have to plug the well right then? You don't want them to plug the well right then because when it goes back up they can start producing again. But you want them to pay you something. I'll get to that in a second. So how much do they pay you while the well is shut in? Old acres, it was the same $1 an acre for the shut-in than it was for the delay rental. I understand that's changing now, and I think people are getting a little wiser about that. Then there's a fourth kind of payment, and that is, when they take your service, they use a number of acres, you should get compensated for the number of acres they're taking, for what they do to your land. If they take your timber, if they deprive you of a market of hay, you should get for that. So there's 4 kinds of payments you can get. The big question you probably got is, how much in those payments should you get? And I'll tell you, just right now, nobody knows. It is exploding. As I say, it used to be $1, $3, $5 an acre was what I saw, and then you made all your real money on the royalty. But I have seen here in Preston County, well, for example, in 2006 in northern Pennsylvania, where the Marcellus is a big deal, people were thrilled when landowners of 3,800 acres got together, they got $35 an acre. November of 2007, $500 an acre bonus up front. And Chesapeake is now offering $1,500 an acre and 15% royalty. But I want to stress that is in northern Pennsylvania where the Marcellus is 150 feet thick. Around here it's less thick, it's 50, 30 feet thick. What does that mean in terms of money? I wish I could tell you, but I can't. I just heard somebody else say they actually have $3,000 an acre up there. That money is important to you, it's up front, but remember, it's not as important as what they can do to your land in the long haul and getting royalties out.